Okay, so we've been talking about what underpins the real teaching. That's our relevance, engagement, assessment, and language. Last time we spoke about skills-based teaching. What is the other fundamental thing that underpins the real teaching?
So yes, you've got skills-based learning. The other one is fun and progress. And the idea behind that is that you need to have both of those things present within our lessons and within students' learning to keep someone motivated, to keep them engaged, and to keep them making progress through their learning with their instrument.
So how do you do that?
There's $1 million question. So, well, that's part of the relevance of the real teaching methodology, the R obviously being relevance, and we're trying to make things as closely related to what is relevant for a student as we possibly can do. So that's one element of it. And the other area is obviously making sure that we are moving forward with the progress, and that obviously comes from our skills-based learning. And so we call this our lesson DNA, having these two strands of fun and progress. And it's the teacher's job, a bit like in the DNA helix, it's the teacher's job to bind those two things together. And so what we want is those two things to be present in every lesson, to varying degrees. And of course, it's a balance to be had in there. But we want those two things present in every lesson. Otherwise, a student is eventually going to stop learning. If you take the fun out of it, and it's just purely about progress, but people aren't enjoying it, it's just going to stop because it's not fun. And it's got to be fun. Music should be fun. And then on the other side of it, if you're not making much progress, but you're just larking around the whole time, you're going to get bored still, aren't you? Because you're doing the same things or working around the same skill over and over again.
So it's similar to the idea of being in flow state, isn't it?
Interestingly, that's exactly what it's based around. And so we have our own fun and progress window, where we can think and look for signs of where a student is within that particular window. And the sweet spot for us is in the top right-hand side, where we're in that flow state where, and lots of people have been in this, where actually you're so engrossed in what you're doing, time just flies by, you're loving what you're doing. And that's where the challenge is just good enough that you can achieve, but it's also enjoyable.
So that sounds like, obviously that's the key to making sure that students are motivated and progressing. But how do you know when students are in flow state?
Well, so there's lots of little symptoms that we can look out for, if you like. So we're going to see what comes out in people's behaviours, the types of words and phrases that students are saying and talking, the way they're demonstrating their enjoyment, or whether they're bored, or whether they're finding it too much of a challenge. There are all these kind of subtle little signs that we look out for as teachers to kind of identify that, and so that we can adjust things. What I would say is that within the fun and progress windows is, yes, the sweet spot is within that flow state, but a student can be in different areas at different times, and quite rightly, because sometimes you do need to just take your foot off the gas a little bit and just enjoy being in that particular area where I can do this. And equally, you also sometimes need to be, okay, let's really knuckle down now. Let's focus on this one, because you can do this one, and it just needs a little bit more attention to it. So it's about the teacher controlling the environment, if you like, to be able to kind of control that fun and progress level.
So it's actually, in a way, kind of similar to the skills-based learning we talked about last time, in that it's a sort of hyper-awareness the teacher has to have as to what's going on, how is it working, and what comes next.
Absolutely spot on it there. Absolutely spot on. So this is about a teacher kind of constantly assessing the situation, as it were. And that could be, what happens as soon as a student walks in the door, from, how much playing have they done in between lessons, right the way through to, like, how focused they are in the lesson. And so it's a teacher's kind of job to be on the ball with all of those things, and to be constantly adjusting, to make those little kind of micro adjustments to make sure we're doing as good a job as possible.
Yeah, and that makes total sense, because sometimes I guess you get a student come through and they haven't practiced as much as you thought they were going to. So whatever you had planned may have to change, right?
And that is the kind of dark art, if you like, to planning, actually, is like you can have a plan, but it might not follow exactly to what that is. So you've got to be responsive to what's going on. There's no point in just ploughing through stuff. And that actually forms part of the assessment of the real teaching, because the big question there is, as a teacher, how do I know that a student really understands that particular skill?
Mm.